Hey everyone, welcome back to No Small Talk Podcast. I'm Ashley,
And I'm Simone.
and we're here today to discuss Women's History Month. Can you
Yay.
believe it?
We're already in March.
I know. That's what I always think like, oh, finally we're in March. It's the wet season before the really wet season.
Oh, yeah, before April.
Mhm.
But I'm glad that we're in March and that we kind of have an opportunity today to talk about something that I think for the last few years, I want to say both you and I have discussed on and off of how our perceptions have changed about this topic and about how our feelings about this topic have probably changed as well. No other than feminism. So today we're Ashley's gonna
Oh,
lead this,
feminism.
which I feel like I used to very much describe myself as a feminist, and I remember coming home from college one during a break, and I was in the kitchen with my mom and my godmother, who experienced and were like young adults during like the second wave feminist movement, which I think is technically from the 1960s to the 80s, and they're like, young women in the 80s. Sorry, not to give away their ages, but it was a really interesting conversation because they were really like, feminism, like, it screwed our lives up. Like, we think it ruined
Oh.
society. And I was like, what are you guys saying? Like, that's crazy that you feel that way. Because I'm in this class and I love my professor. She was incredible. I took like a feminist theory class though, so it was more so just like diving into different feminist theories. It wasn't like you
Mhm.
need to be a feminist or anything, but it
Yeah.
was really cool to talk about, to understand intersectionality and understand all these different things that play a role in the good things and not in the not so good things that emerge from the movement. And I thought I had a balanced perspective, but obviously as we get older, our perspectives shift at times as
And
well.
they feel well. So you mentioned second wave feminism. Can you kind of give a definition of what is second wave feminism? Because I think when I hear feminism, I just think it's like one giant blob. Like until I took that, I think I took a class, that same class with a different professor. But
Mm-hmm.
when I, in our culture now, we just find like feminism is angry purple haired lady
Real okay. So
or
I
blue
can
haired.
simplify it. I hope I can. It's been a minute, but okay.
Okay.
So I would define first wave feminism spanning from probably the mid 1800s, so probably like 1848, kind of in conjunction with abolitionism. Like, they're talking about liberation, freedom, equality, right? So because I feel like the early feminist movement really did kind of go hand in hand with the abolitionist movement. Not to be repetitive, but so I think it kind of ranged from around there, but the focus went more towards like freeing Black people more
Yeah.
than it went to like women's freedom. But we still had like Seneca Falls and things like that. And then up until like 1920 with, we had the 19th Amendment. So white women were given the right to vote. Black women didn't really still receive the right to vote, or it was still difficult or an obstacle for us until the 1960s with the Voting Rights Act of 1965. But that is where I would kind of put first wave feminism in. It was more about suffrage. It was a suffrage movement. Second wave feminism, which was more so from like the 1960s until the 1980s, were more about giving women more opportunities in the workplace. So really focusing, I think, on like rights, equal pay, the fact that, like in the 70s, women couldn't buy property or open credit cards. So that was a big thing for them. They're like, we don't have any purchasing power. Like, I remember my mom telling me like, oh yeah, your gramps would just give me his credit card. Not thinking, oh, you couldn't even get one on your own if you wanted to.
Oh, I'm
But
like, yeah, please give me
yeah,
your credit card.
yeah, I know, right? That's
I
like,
don't want to pay for this
let me
shit.
go back to that. That's what I was thinking. I was like, wow, I love if I could just be like, hey, Dad, can I just have your credit card and go shopping?
Right?
He's like, can you open your own,
I need some stuff. I know.
But yeah, that's my gramps. He was like, here, take my card, go to the
Oh.
mall. I know. I'm like, how awesome was that? Uh, but like, yeah, like, so women couldn't like technically buy property or like open credit cards by themselves. Like, they have to have a husband or a father sign off on those things for them. So the second wave movement was more about, I think, getting economic and some social equality for women, which I'm not opposed to, even though I think the crux of my, like, if I have an issue with the feminist movement, I think it's this conception of equality versus equity. I have that issue with, even when we talk about any type of social justice, because to me, like, I'm not a man, and I'm okay that I'm not a man. And I think that this whole push to be like, we want to be considered the same as a man, we're not. And that's just the reality. And I don't think it's a bad reality. I think that we have an equity of value, which I know we're going to talk about probably more in a different episode about femininity. So there's an equity of value. We have the same intrinsic value, but we're different, and that's okay. But I think second wave was more so like, let's argue for sameness, because they wanted, I want to be paid if I'm doing the same job. I want to be paid the same as a man. And I think that that makes logical sense. So they really tried to argue for this, like, oh, we're the same. And then third wave, I feel like it was more so about like sexual harassment and like abuse of women. So kind of going after like domestic violence, sexual harassment, the fact, considering like rape a crime and getting prosecuted for things like that, and being able to speak out about those things. And then we get into fourth wave, which we're kind of in now, which people kind of look at as like a continuation of third wave feminism, which third wave was more so, it was about sexual harassment, intersectionality, of like including looking at the different subgroups of women. So like Black women or lesbian women, like all these different groups that kind of fall in under womankind. That's what that movement was kind of about. And now fourth wave, honestly, I think is kind of where like we get Me Too. Like that's like fourth wave feminism. Not saying that it's not good to call out these things, because I definitely think there's a time and a place for it. I'm glad women are able to use their voices to call out like gross like things, like horrible things that happen to women that people want to ignore. But I think where there's a little bit of backlash or discrepancy is because it feels right now, at least from my perspective, that fourth wave is kind of merging into like being, I want to say, our culture, I think, has morphed it into, if you're sexually free, if you're like, own your body, just because I'm wearing this, you can't treat me that way, things like, which is true, but I feel like it's kind of like gone way off to almost like equating sexual freedom with like feminism. Do you understand what I'm saying, or does that make any sense?
No, it does. So it can evolve from recognize a woman that's like as someone, as a person, as a created being. New Testament talks about women being equal, like through Christ, there is no difference between men and women.
Yep.
And that's what you're saying. First wave feminism is identifying, and it goes from there into like, okay, I want to be like, women should be able to vote. You should pay women equally for the same job in the same workplace, doing the same thing. Into now, it's very much focused on sex and who you're kind of sleeping with.
Yeah, and kind of like almost like, I think it could in the same vein of like, oh, we're the same as men. So like, if we act like men sexually, that should still be like respected and revered, which I would argue, I don't think it's good that men act that way.
He does it.
Maybe that's because I'm my little Christian self, that I'm just like, why can't we all just acknowledge this?
Can we just all keep it in our pants?
Exactly, for our souls and for our actions and for our communities. But that's just my opinion. But I think that's where it goes with it. And that, honestly, that concept is what I'm really struggling with. I think even equating myself with the feminist movement anymore. I would say I'm a second wave feminist, if I am one at all, or second, third, whatever. Understand those things, appreciate what they accomplished for women, but also I think now that it's years later, we can critique it a little bit, and we can say like, hey, where has this been positive in our society, and what are the negative consequences of this within our society and within even our psyche.
So I'm so glad that you brought up like your mom's experience and your godmother's experience, that feminism ruined everything. Because I found a reel on Facebook because I scroll Facebook far more than I care to admit to.
We all
And
do.
it's
Or
addicting.
reels in general.
I know, reels. And then I'm like, you feel like you learn so much in like half an hour too. And it's like, it could all be garbage, but that's a tangent. Anyways, this reel
But
I
you're right,
came
because you're
across.
taking in a lot and you have to critique it. So yeah, what did you see on your reel that kind of, I think, merged this conversation?
Well, it said feminism is a scam that the government used to double the tax income and then educate our children into, or morph our children into what they want it to be. And I had to do a kind of like a double take.
Oof.
And I had to look at the hashtags. And it's a hashtag feminism is a scam, all one word. And so I'm like, I'm gonna go on the Instagrams and see what's all associated with it. And there's a bunch of reels associated with it calling out feminism, that we have extremely high like depression now, that women having more anxiety, women are not healthier than they used to be. That through all of this metamorphosis and all of these waves, we're not better off. In fact, we are more like, some have said that we are far more stressed than like a 1950s housewife.
I can't help but like kind of agree with that
Mm-hmm.
when I think about it contextually, because I think the amount of like pressure women are under now, because we're kind of looked at as like, well, you can do everything a man should do, so you should go try to
Mm-hmm.
do that.
Well, what type of pressure do you think women are under now?
The pressure to achieve, to be a boss babe, to
Mm.
hustle, to prove in our society that you're just as valuable as a man by doing exactly what he's doing,
Mm.
which I'm trying to unlearn personally. I mean, honestly, I think I kind of had a hard time with my mom. I was like, when daddy was this age, he did X, Y, and Z. She's like, why are you comparing yourself to him? And I'm like, because school taught me I should. Like, I should try to be like this. And I'm like,
Well,
no, probably not.
that's kind of the whole, it is the whole school system. You work as hard as you can, then you get the A, and then when you get the A, you get the college degree. When you get the college degree, you get a job, and then you work as hard as you can in the job, you get the higher pay.
Yep.
And
You
school
raise that
systems don't
ladder.
teach us to work smarter. They teach us
Mm-mm.
to work harder.
Our whole society kind of teaches us like, well, if you work hard, you're going to make
Mm-hmm.
money and you're going to be happy if you work hard.
So kind of going back to like what that statement says, that it takes our children away from us. As a mother, that probably hit me the hardest in that whole statement. And as a working mother, so I feel the pain. Like I feel that pressure all the time. My house is constantly a mess because I just don't have the physical time and energy to keep up with, two kids and maintaining a home as pretty as I would love it to be. So
Because those are two full-time jobs. I'm
they
sorry, like
are.
you work
They
a full-time
are.
job and then you have like raising children, taking care of kids. I feel like that's a full-time job. People get paid to
Mm,
do it in daycare and in schools. Teachers get paid to do it.
yep.
And then
Yep.
housework is another full-time job. Cooking, cleaning, like a woman
Planning,
planning even the meal, and then grocery
meal
shopping,
planning.
meal planning, cleaning things. That's 3 jobs. Then you got to be like the emotional support for your whole family. So you a therapist, and you like all these different things, depending on how old your kids are. So I don't know. I remember being in a class once and we talked about, economic models and how like
Mhm.
it quantified how much, because of what women contribute, like what a full-time mom would, just a homemaker would
Yeah.
contribute side who has children, it's like $100,000. Like that's how much you should be paid for all the jobs that you do as just the homemaker. And then add that on top of like actually going to work and clocking in and having to do this job and be away from your family and then coming home and having to basically continue working.
Yeah.
That's what we live with now.
So with the whole pressure of you mentioned that the achieving, like that's a hard driver. And I would say yes. And achieving is like, it's a good thing to strive for. It's a good thing to include, in my opinion. because there are certain things that I want to achieve. I want to achieve being a better cook. I want to achieve being better at organizing. I want to achieve my own healing, my own self, so that like I don't pass on my traumas and my anxieties onto my children.
Mm-hmm.
We all have trauma from our childhood, but we need to make sure that we're not like, I need to achieve more like emotional stability. So when my child acts up, because help
Kids do
me,
that.
they do. They
Yeah,
find your buttons like so fast,
they're
and
very
you push
smart. Kids
all
are
of them.
smart.
They are. It's fascinating. And it's just like parenting is such a joy. Like I can go on, like have a whole episode about how wonderful parenting is. Um, it's very rewarding. So like when I thought of like the things that weigh on us and how like women are now much more depressed, and I was thinking like what weighs on me? I'm like, well, my career. I feel like I'm halfway doing my career now because I have an infant. I'm trying, and
Mm.
infants require a lot of energy. They get up throughout the night, which is 100% natural because they need to be eating a lot. And
Mm.
so it's very much, and infants don't want, like, they want to play with dad, they want to see dad, they want to be held and cuddled and fed by mom.
Wow.
When
Yeah.
they wake up in the middle of the night, sure, like, I think if you start off young enough, they can accept dad, but at the end of the day, they really want their mama. They want the person whose heartbeat they heard for the past 9 months.
Mm.
They want the scent, they want the voice, they want their mom.
Yeah.
I think I watched a psychologist talk about like dads are like the first safe place for children to leave their mother's loving arms. So for children to like explore the world, dads lure them away with the promise of having fun. So when dads play with their children, that lures their children away.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense
Yeah,
in
and
a
like
good,
kind of
healthy way,
yeah, like opens them up to exploring the world around them a little bit more.
in
Where
a
like
safe place.
initially they want to be nurtured. They just want
They
that.
do.
Yeah, I see that.
And so that takes away from our career because that is a huge it takes a lot emotionally and mentally out of you, and then on top of it you have to perform at your best for your career so you don't get replaced. And I don't blame the employer for wanting to replace someone who's not performing.
Yeah.
Like you're paying this, you want this type of performance, but at the same time it's like it's a very hard place to be in.
It is, and I think it kind of forces women to kind of have a conversation with themselves sometimes.
Yeah.
When I was like in a corporate environment, I remember being a part of a call during Women's History Month where they kind of, and this is some time ago, was right like during 2020, and kind of just saying, or 2021, but they're like statistically like last year like women are just like leaving the workforce, like
Yeah.
because then they were at home with their kids full time and trying to work full time, and they're like, well, how do we stop this? How do we stop women leaving the workforce? And I'm like, maybe they're just tired of trying to do it both. Like I'm just like, they can't.
They
They need a
are.
break.
They are. And people left and started their own careers, like their own businesses. Like there was a massive exodus from the workforce during that time.
Yeah.
Um, Additionally, a lot of women, they do maintain a home, so they are responsible for all the cleaning, like making sure that chores get done, things get picked up. Is homework done? What papers need to be signed?
Because it's interesting with the feminist movement, which I'm sure more brilliant minds than mine have called this out, but with the whole equality thing, it was more like equality in the workplace, but not so much equality in the home space.
So it's hard to get equality in the home space. And I
Mm-hmm.
say that like, and because that's like the easy answer, like, oh, the dad just needs to step up and do more.
No, but I mean, that's
And
not even societally, I feel like, what we emphasize or what we try to focus on, even within like romantic dynamics. Like, I don't think men are thinking, I was like, well, oh, she works 40 hours a week, so I need to cook dinner 3 times a week. And so, like, I don't think that, because that's not where their natural strength lies all the time. Like, no, like, there's some guys who cook great, but,
oh
like,
yeah, my husband's an
but
incredible
that's
cook, like incredible.
exactly. But I don't think like overall, like the general consensus is like, oh yeah, like there needs to be quality of all of these things. Like we need to be sharing these responsibilities. I think it's very much like you're leaving work and then it's another job on top of that.
Yeah, it is like that. And I know the easy answer is like, well, just tell your husband to do more. And my husband does a lot around
Mhm.
here. His brain doesn't see the mess. I've seen other like shorts and reels of this too, of like what my family sees, and they see a perfectly clean kitchen, and then what do I see? I see like countertops not wiped off. There's like the sink needs to be scrubbed down, but they see dishes in the dishwasher. You know, like food's put away. It's good.
Mhm. I can
And
see that that's very accurate. I think it's a mom brain thing too. I
it
think moms specifically see a catastrophe and everyone
it
else is like,
is.
it's fine.
It's
What are you
fine.
talking about?
Moms will see the dog hair on the floor, and
Mhm.
everyone's like, "It's just like what dog hair?" And I remember being a kid, and my mom's like, "There's so much dog hair," and I'm just like, "Where is this?" Now I'm a mom. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, the dog hair!
Everywhere.
It's everywhere."
Oh man, that's funny. That
So,
happened today. That's a lot. I'm just like, where's his hair coming from? Oh man,
like my husky.
that's accurate. Yes, and I'm just like, you didn't think about this, but it's not as bad. But I mean, but it's real. Like it's so real, and I'm like, and I want to care a little bit more, and I do, and I clean it up a lot. But then sometimes I'm just like, eh. I'm just like, it's fine.
Triggered, like, and it's like your mom brain kicks in because it, and your brain's like, this has to be clean because I don't want it to infect and hurt my children.
Mm.
And so I really think it's like part of the whole chemical change. That's my personal theory.
No, you're right. Because I mean, kids pick up literally everything off the floor.
Oh heavens,
It's
they
not
do.
the same thing. Like,
They
it's,
do.
so when you know, like, hey, if things are messy, something bad could happen. Like,
Mhm.
so yeah, I get that.
And then meals, like trying to like for a while, like when my husband and I both worked full time, you know, I would get home, kiss my daughter, and then I would um, start cooking a meal at home, and then I would have to do dishes afterwards. And I didn't spend a, and I was getting really bitter, and I realized I wasn't spending any time with my daughter, who was like, you know, that's a part of a motivating like factor for me to keep working was like, okay, I have to help provide for my family.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was very, very that was like a huge weight on me, and that's a separation from what matters to us. It's like this other thing. And you can eat out every night, but that's all full of junk food, and then you
Yeah,
start feeling sick in another way because it's messing with your gut. And
yeah,
then homemaking. I've seen like a lot of video reels, and people are like, that's not a real house. Well, that person stays at home. She's a homemaker. Of course, that's her real house. She's worked. Like, we don't have the capacity. We're just trying to like literally put stuff away and keep like clean the toilet from the past week.
yeah,
We don't have time to be like, oh, does this look cute? I want to paint this wall. I want to make this look nice, you know, because we literally like, okay, did I clean the toilet? Did I wash the tub? Are the dishes done? Or is like everything wiped down? Hey,
the
I'm going to try and
laundry
get to
put
the
away.
floor. Is the laundry put away? Oh, there's another pile of laundry on there. There's like 3 piles of laundry I have to get through.
Mhm.
So that's like, that's a lot of weight on the person. So I can understand. And so I understand where like the person's coming from, like feminism is a scam. Because in that perspective, who's really benefiting? The government doubled their tax income.
Yep.
Congratulations. Um, for a while, like you could get ahead if you had two working parents. Now, if you have two working parents, like it's just status quo because everything has inflated to that you know, to that
Yeah.
point.
And there's
Like
almost like this consensus that you can't survive on just one income, so you need two people that'll work.
it is very, very difficult. And it was difficult for like our parents, and it's very difficult right now with the rate of inflation to live off one income.
Yeah. Mm.
So um I really kind of like appreciated like you opening up with like the different waves of feminism and talking about that, because I kind of had to ask the question, what has feminism done for us? Because I can't say like the whole thing has been bad, because I know people who've gotten jobs that have helped them out of very toxic situations that were not safe for them.
Yeah, because we can't deny that because men had I will say like more capital in society prior to the feminist movement. Like you could very easily be in a situation where you're being abused
Yeah.
verbally, physically, financially. and not really have a method of escape if you can't go out and earn money, if you can't get a degree. Like degrees were seen for so long for women as like a luxury kind of, or almost like finishing
Yeah.
school versus like actual degrees to help you like go and get a job and be employable.
Mhm.
Um, so I
I think
can't say, sorry.
I was gonna say the concept of degrees changed from men that way too, because men used to just get like a trade job,
Yeah,
and degrees were a luxury for the wealthy up until what was that? Like, was it like the 50s and 60s? I want to say I haven't
I
looked that up
feel
exactly, but that feels like the time frame when we started actually prioritizing degrees and
that.
saying that you must have them, and then we're finding out that you really don't need a degree to do every job. That
Yeah.
on the job training is actually
We
much
can
more
say
useful.
it's college is scam. That could be another episode. I don't know. I really
College is a
appreciate.
scam.
I will say caveat. I do enjoy the process of being educated. I mean, even doing this
Yeah.
podcast, I feel like it's kind of a push to continue to research, continue to educate ourselves, re-educate ourselves, question things around us, which is what our professors always taught us to do, which I think is critical thinking is super important because a lot of people, but now I don't think always college degrees involve critical thinking, which is really
Mhm.
unfortunate. I feel like it's kind of a like, okay, you just need this piece of paper to get a job, where the
Exactly.
value of becoming educated is getting like washed away. Where I feel like
Yeah.
you and I were in an environment where like just becoming educated, like being in an environment to better ourselves and to better our mindsets and ways of working and interacting with the world around us was what was being cultivated more so than like just getting through something to get a piece of paper to get a job. Like
It we went to a liberal arts education,
yeah.
and so that's why I was a little bit more well-rounded. Liberal arts focuses on like critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a quick look up just to say, okay, what has feminism really done for us? Because after that statement, I was like, oh crap.
It was
So
all a
number
conspiracy. Double tax force.
one thing that feminism has done for us is like one, women are people. I've acknowledged that. Equality for women, equal pay for women, educational benefits for women, right to vote for women, protections in the workplace against discrimination. And I thought about not losing your job if you get pregnant.
Exactly, because that was a real fear. Like
Yeah,
basically, if you got pregnant, you're not guaranteed a job. Or even now, still, I feel like if you're even pregnant looking for a job, that's a little
you
dicey
don't.
territory. You can't. Like,
And I don't blame the employer. What, we're going to hire you for a couple months just for you to take time off and maybe not
information.
come back?
Yeah.
Like, it's callous. But if you get pregnant and you are showing and you're looking for a job, you're pretty much screwed.
Sucks.
Um, it does. It
Super
does.
sucks. But continue.
Just decisions about being pregnant and then a push to the workplace. And so a lot of those things
To
in
the
of themselves,
workplace.
like a
Wow.
push to be into the workplace, if that makes sense.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So that's what it's done for us. Okay.
Because if you think about, oh, women are exiting, this is a tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just being like, oh, looks like our society is just changing. But
It's
it's like,
she.
oh no,
Yeah.
it's just
No.
shifting.
Exactly. That's what freaked me out about that whole conversation. I was kind of like, why are people acting like this is Armageddon? Like, I was like, this
Well,
makes logical sense to me. I'm like, yeah, I would probably want to be just at home with my baby too. But like, if I could afford to do it, cool. Like, if I was in that situation, could afford to, sure. Like, that makes sense. And maybe they were like, we can weigh the pros and cons, and this is where we're going. Like,
I, I talked to a woman who was from Mississippi, and she said, you know, when I was growing up, if a woman stayed at home and could home make, it was a sign that you were extremely wealthy because your man had a job that he could afford it. And that totally changed the game for me because I was always growing up, oh, you have two incomes, your mom works, you guys must have a lot of money. To like, oh no, like this is wealth to have one parent at home. Even if times are tough, that is still wealth.
it is.
And it just kind of like completely shifted my mindset of like looking at it as like instead of, oh, you just don't have the money to go buy things or go out to fancy restaurants, into no, we have the money to have our kids with us and to make sure you have a parent at home. So when you call home, you're not trying to get a hold of mom at the workplace or dad at the workplace. Who will answer first? You have a number to call.
Yeah. And I think what you're even kind of saying, so correct me if I'm wrong, it's wealth in a different context. It's wealth in
Yeah.
like it is a wealthy thing in a sense of like, I don't. Okay, so I'm gonna just guess in my mindset, I feel spoiled, and like our
Mhm.
family will be like, you and your sister are so spoiled," and I would be like, "What? Like I don't get a lot of material things. What are they talking about?" And I'm
Mhm.
like, "Oh, we're spoiled with time and affection." Okay, because
Mm.
when I was around 8, my
Yeah.
mom and dad made the decision for my mom to stop working. And she
Yeah.
stopped working until I was basically almost out of high school. And
Oh,
granted,
wow.
he has a business and she would like support the business. So she'd do like his
Mhm.
invoicing and calling customers. And so she was working still, but
Yeah,
like
that's still
more
working.
with him.
Mhm.
And then, she was home, she would do that. And then she would take care of the house, cook dinner. And she was home when I
Wow.
got home from school. Like, so through middle school drama, she was my therapist. Through I'm
Mhm.
having a horrible cycle today, come get me. Like I don't want to go to school today. I'm stressed out. She's there. Like through
Yeah.
all of it. I'm at home like I was 10th grade watching The View at 11 o'clock having coffee with my mom. And I'm just like, and having a chat and then writing papers and sending it to my teachers, which is really horrible. But like, no, it wasn't. I needed the mental health days. And I was glad that I
Yay.
got them. And
Mhm.
I did feel spoiled. I still feel spoiled that like I came home and someone was there. Where like the
Yeah.
majority of my classmates came home to empty houses for hours.
Oh, yeah.
And just how that's such a transitional period of your life and you're dealing with so
Mhm.
many things, and then to not have a parent there, like, even though I will say like I didn't have all of the things that my classmates did, like it was a
Mhm.
huge sacrifice, and my mom acknowledged like this is going to be, it's a cutback, it's a huge
Yeah.
sacrifice, plus then a recession. So there was a lot of things that we all were like, well, like I stopped taking piano lessons, I stopped taking, like there were just different things we
Yeah.
decided like as a family we're probably not going to be able to do these things right now. And I think we all took that on and was like, I'd rather give up X, Y, and Z to be able to be with my mom.
Mhm.
That's what she's willing to do too. And she's willing to give up some luxuries of life to be with me because that's where they were at and they're wherever they were at that moment in time. And I mean, and she can resume now. She's kicking butt in her current profession and she's loving it. But yeah, like I'm glad that she had that time. And it kind of honestly breaks my heart that society has shifted so far away from that to where
Mhm.
it almost seemed like impossible. And maybe it is because I'm not in that position where I could say, I can easily say, like, oh, yeah, I would love to just stay home with my kids when they're at a certain age or whatever. But I don't know. I don't know what the
Mhm.
income of my future husband will be. I don't know what my income will be. I don't know any of these various factors. But
Mhm.
I do see such a shift though right now in our society of like women our age kind of deciding for either a short amount of time or a different time of scaling back work or having more time with their kids or having jobs where they can work remote so they can actually see their kids more
Yeah.
during the day and not have to go to daycare throughout the
Mhm.
week. I think women are starting to, I don't know, prioritize themselves and their needs and their natural abilities more, if that makes sense.
I see that too. I think leading up to it, like feminism has led to the devalue, like contributed, not led, excuse me, but contributed to the devaluing of family structure
I agree.
as
That would be a
waves
downside.
progressed. I won't say that like the wave number one did that. I think wave number one was just like like women are humans,
Give us
not
rights. We need a
property.
voice, or like we should
Yeah.
have a voice too.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so because we've devalued the family structure, we've devalued raising the next generation. And so
Mm-hmm.
we have generations of people who they put their kids from 6 weeks old into a daycare. And not saying that's wrong or that's bad, because I did that. I did that with my 10-week-old. I put her into a daycare so I could work.
Do you feel though that, I mean, I think it's been normalized though, and I think
Mhm.
if you have an issue with it, you're looked at like you're weak.
You are definitely looked at as they're weak. And people like the day one, they're like, hey, just leave a little early today because we know it's a hard day. And I felt like, and it could just be like the culture I grew up with, but like I just
Mhm.
felt very much like I'm not going to show how it affected me. Now, granted, um, how I process stress is like I'm a post stress processor, so I don't feel it until after the moment. So I actually didn't feel the grief of leaving my dropping my child off. And also Cody, my husband, was the one dropping our child off at daycare because he
Okay.
worked in the same area. Um, I didn't feel it until like a year later after like Martin Luther King Day. We had that day off.
Mhm.
And after a day of just spending it with my oldest and playing with her, and like I just sat there. I remember sitting there and marveling at how much she had grown, and I realized I was missing out on how much she had developed. Her
Wow.
fine motor skills, her walking, her communicating, like just how much she had developed into her own little person. I had completely missed it because I just wasn't there during the day.
Wow.
And so the day after that, I got into work and I had an email from a customer saying, I can't get this finish to work, panicking. And I had a meltdown. I was like, I don't care about your stupid finish. Screw your finish. I want my kid. Like, I don't care. I'm very like customer service oriented. Like, oh my goodness, this is very stressful for our customer. They're trying to get this done so they can meet this bid, so they can get, pay their bills. Like, this is very stressful. Like, and so I would like take that on. I'm like, okay, we're gonna get this fixed. Don't worry, I'm right on it. And like, I couldn't even reply back to the email. I was just like, screw your finish.
Yeah, I
We
want to
have 1,000 different finishes.
exactly.
If you don't like them, make your own. But like, I digress.
No, that's so real, Ashley. Thank you for even sharing that, because that's hard. That's incredibly hard. And I'm so sorry that you kind of had that moment of realize, like, I mean, I'm glad you had the moment of
Yeah,
realizing.
no. It is, and that was part of the reason why we had to figure out how do we exit, like I call it exiting, escaping the rat race. And we had to kind of do it in a non-conventional manner
Mm-hmm.
at the time. But who knows what the future is going to look like? Maybe we shift things again to go into more of a conventional manner. Because we've done it in a non-conventional manner, we are still feeling that stress because the roles aren't, we're working against nature.
Mm-hmm.
But we will see what happens. Yep, but I think that's kind of like something with like our generation starting to value raising the next generation. I was talking to another coworker too, is that she's like, you know what? I don't mind my job, but once I'm clocked out, I'm on my time. I don't want to go to work parties or anything like that, or kind of socialize, like rub elbows with like, she's a lawyer. So she was talking about kind of rubbing like that whole culture of
Yeah.
going
Smooth
out afterwards. Yeah.
networking. Yeah.
Yes. And she's like, nope, I'm here and I'm going to clock out. And that's kind of where I think our culture is that we are like, you know what, we're going to give you what we have during 8 or 9 hours, and then we're going to clock out and we're going to go home and hang out with our kids.
Yeah. And have a life.
Yeah. Because like we realize we don't have a lot of time with our kids until they're on their own.
Mm.
So I know, like, kind of saying these things, like, I know I've kind of hit a few nerves because if I were to hear this, it would hit quite a few nerves in me because I have a lot of guilt. And I get really upset whenever I listen to a podcast about why women shouldn't work and we should actually be at home with our kids. Not saying that women shouldn't work in general, but why we should just like developmentally, why it's so much better for our children for us to be home, and how like the nature and how we're actually working against our own nature with going into the workplace. And it's tough because I know I'm in a situation of like, I don't have a choice. I need to go to work. And now I'm not saying that if you choose to and you're like, I do gain satisfaction from my work, go for it. All the power to you. But if you don't have a choice, this hits like a really core nerve that you feel guilty and you feel angry about. And so I wanted to share that like the devaluing of raising the next generation and our family structure, it's not a female issue. We often look at this as this is a women's issue of that, they're leaving the workplace for their children or they're doing this for their children, but it's really a human issue.
It's a social capital thing. Like, it benefits society for women to be home.
Yes.
Wow.
It does. Yeah.
It just does. And it's unfortunate that I don't think there's a priority for that. Like, I don't know the statistics, so I feel like I don't want to insert this, but I feel like there was even a move within Michigan for our governor. Someone mentioned to me that they wanted to, give a tax credit or something to
Oh
people who
yeah, they
pay
do.
for daycare, because daycare is super expensive. It's like a mortgage.
It just increased daycare though.
Yeah. I'm sure it did, but
That's
like
all it did.
without the intention behind it of like trying to kind of help cut this cost.
Mhm.
But I really kind of wish there would have been like a, hey, we're gonna give you a tax credit for staying home.
Yeah. Or like, hey, here's like, let's do what California does, and let's give you a tax credit to stay at home a couple more weeks past 6 weeks,
Yeah.
past your maternity leave. And I'm going to tell you, like 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 2 years, it's not enough time.
I know. I'm like, I don't think that makes a big difference. In
Like
my
it
mind, when
doesn't,
you
like
said it,
it
I was
does,
like, 4
and
more
it
weeks.
doesn't at the same time. Like it does and it doesn't.
Wow.
I had to pay for my first maternity leave, and I was able to do 10 weeks off, and that was huge. Um, I had maternity leave up to 12 weeks on my second time, and that was just an awesome, incredible, mind-blowing blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And like the second one was less stressful because I didn't have to go back to work for pay. Like I'm like, oh crap, we've depleted a lot of resources. I need to get back to work.
Yeah.
But it was hard.
Yeah. Just that transition of doing, I don't know how, like, I don't know how she does it type of like mindset of like, when I look at you and I look at my friends that I know who are mothers who also work, I'm like, I don't know how you physically do this every day. Like,
Die
you're
slowly.
you're incredible. That's all I want to say. You're incredible. If no one has told you today,
Overstimulated.
the caffeine helps, but I'm just like,
Exactly. We drink a pot of coffee. We are like, yeah, our guts messed up, hormonally unbalanced. It's a ton of fun.
no,
But
it's an incredible thing, seriously. But I know, like, and let's just to say, like, both jobs are hard. Like, I feel like working full time is hard. Being a mom full time is super hard.
right.
Doing both, I'm sure, is also like, in my mind, it's doubly hard. But like, but even like everything has its pros and cons. Because I'm sure, like, some people
Absolutely.
say, like, hey, I'm a homemaker, I feel trapped in home. Like, it's very much, I think, based on your own as a temperament a little bit. Like, some women I think can do it a lot better than others, or are
You
more
have
like,
to have a more of an entrepreneurial spirit at home.
okay,
Because then you have to be able, like, I'm going to create this home environment so I'm not trapped and my children aren't trapped. And we're going to get creative. Even if there's no resources, I'm going to get creative with how we go to the park. I'm going to look up, we all have computers in our hands. I'm going to
yeah.
look up free local resources so my kids can learn. Like, we get out of the house, we go to this free educational thing together. So,
And even the
and
freedom to be able to do that as a mom, because I love that about my mom. It was like, we were at, maybe that's why now I love, people are like, what do you want to do? I'm like, go to a museum. Because that's what we did as kids. She had art projects, like, you know, art supplies, going to museums, going to the park. We went to the zoo a lot. Like, I think my
yeah,
granddad got us like a zoo pass. Like, for a few years when we were little, like, that was his like yearly thing. He would buy us a yearly membership to the zoo.
oh,
Like,
yeah,
and it was just so nice to like be able to get outside or go take a dance class or whatever. Like, she really, I
yeah.
think, put a lot of intentional effort into enriching our education outside of school and before
Mhm.
school. Even with reading, like taking your kids to the library and, you know, just kind of cultivating those loves for different things, whether it's art, sciences, like seeing what your kids like. And that takes a lot of energy and effort. And I don't know if like, it's like, okay, you have the weekend, I guess, but
Yeah, it's not that much time.
girl, it's a lot. I'm like, that's just like, that's like a bunch of things. It's like women
Yeah.
are kind of looked at as like, okay, being a wife, I think, is a whole thing. And then being a mom, working full time, then enriching your kids' education because you know the
Yeah.
schools aren't doing it. And there's a lot of different things that we want to make sure, I think, as Christians, as women, that we want to
Mhm.
impart in our kids outside of those contexts. And then also like being a friend, friendships, cultivating friendships. Even thank you for making time for doing a
Mhm.
podcast. Like, yay, we get to
Vice
talk
versa.
at least once a week. So that's
Yeah.
nice. And then also like I think the social responsibility we feel is like upholding like our communities, our churches, volunteering. Like I think at some point, you know, some of those things go to the back burner in my mind because I'm like, if you have kids, your kids are your ministry in my mind. But still,
Yeah.
women will still do that too. They
Mhm.
serve even when they have small children. So it's like what, 6 things I counted? I'm like,
So going back, I think feminism is a scam. I think that's a little bit too black and white. I think we like to say all bad or all good on things.
yeah.
I wouldn't blame feminism for really just women in general being overwhelmed. I think the Mayo Clinic, I won't get into it, but they basically said women are twice as likely to be diagnosed with depression than men. And I'm not going to blame feminism for all of that. Is it probably a contribution? Perhaps. But I really blame the culture
It's
and
cold.
us for accepting it, the devaluation of our family and devaluation of raising our next generation. So I kind of want to like,
And I, can I add to that? Like,
oh,
I think
absolutely.
acceptance of our own natures. I feel like we're kind of
Yeah.
taught to not like femininity. Like,
Yeah.
we're taught that it's weakness. We're taught that operating like a woman in certain environments is like
Mhm.
bad. And I'm not gonna, like, I honestly, like, when we think about it, it's like we in our minds are taught to say,
Mhm.
like, you need to do exactly what a man does, and if you don't, you're weak. If you don't, you're not good enough. If you
Or
don't,
crazy.
yeah, or
That's
crazy,
my
or you can't
favorite
do it.
one.
It is, and it's like,
Like,
do y'all not realize that women operate on a cycle? And that's not to say that our cycles, but like literally, like I think a year or so ago, I looked into the concept of cycle syncing, which is kind of
mhm.
like syncing your activities and exercise and eating habits and
Oh,
things
yeah.
to what part of your cycle you are in. And I was like
Mhm.
mind blown. And it's like,
Yeah.
if you're a woman, you can't do like P90X every day. Like, you just can't.
Mm-mm.
Like, it's not, and the ones who do, good for y'all, I guess, but I feel like you're denying like your natural feminine rhythm. And
It's,
then
yeah,
wonder why we're depressed. Wonder why, like,
we're out
we
of
can't do
balance.
certain things and we're out of balance. Exactly. Like, we're not grounding ourselves in, like, I think appreciating how God created us.
Mhm. Well, my favorite too is that women are better at picking up on nonverbal communication than men are.
Mhm.
And the reason is because of infants. We read infants. We figure out what infants want. Men just hear crying. And it's literally down to like what we're used to or like how we're wired. So when you have a conversation with someone, your wife is, or the woman is much more likely to be like, don't like them. There's something off. I just feel like there's something off. And really what it is that our brain is like, ooh, there is a disconnect between their nonverbals and what they are saying. And it doesn't feel right. Like this doesn't feel genuine. And men are like, you're
About
just being crazy. You just have like a chip on your shoulder. Like, I think you're making this up. And it's really like, you're going to base this off a feeling, but it's like, no, we're really picking up on, your feelings are generated by stimuli and reactions to stimuli. And our stimuli
that.
is there's something not right about this situation.
Wow.
So that's something that we have to
That
kind of
also
like,
makes you probably depressed. Second
because
guess.
you're always being gaslit. You're like, this isn't right. No, it's totally fine.
Wow. Or even
So,
like I'm really in the, like, the phase of exploring like what
mhm.
type of career, what type of work actually like fulfills me. It makes me feel like I'm being utilized like to my, I'll say, fullest potential, or like feeling valued. And
Mhm.
I get into a space sometimes where I think even in my mind or from like external voices where it's like people like, oh, you're really good at that. And I'm like, am I? Because I'm not really enjoying it. And I'm just like, is it just because I'm
It's
good
like,
at it doesn't mean I should do it? But I think that there's this weird dichotomy behind like always, I don't know, sorry to say really here, but like always like second guessing
yeah.
what feels right, or like always second
Mhm.
guessing our intuition, and also I don't know, being like told like, well, if you don't like something, you should just try harder, or you should like figure
Yeah.
it out, or you should develop a certain skill, or you should, like, very much going against like any of your internal feelings. And we can't live our life completely based on feelings, but I think when you neglect them for so long,
Yeah.
you kind of get
They
onto this
add
like
up.
chasm. Yeah, and like at one point you just have to like draw back because you're just like,
Yeah.
okay, let's reevaluate all these things. And I think honestly right now in society amongst women, like we're taking a step back on this feminism thing, we're reevaluating it. So yeah, like it's not as black as what in black and white like you're saying. It's
Yeah.
not, oh, it's just a scam. It's okay, what pieces of this have been beneficial to me, and what
Mhm.
parts do I need to kind of like re-examine, and what lies have I been told through our society in conjunction with this movement that make me that I might have to question and find truth in.
Yeah, I agree. I think definitely with the feelings, and making sure you're not in denial of them, because if you're feeling overwhelmed but you keep shoving that in a box, it's going to explode.
Yep.
And most likely on your children, and that's going to hurt a lot
and lead to like breakdowns and things, which is more reasons for people to call us crazy.
And to be twice as likely to be in depression. It's going to lead to depression.
Definitely.
So I kind of found a couple of verses that were like comforting to me, and this is from the perspective of being a mother, because I think I know it was overwhelming before I became a mom, but once I became a mom, like everything kind of got forced to be in line, because I have two beautiful children that I need to make sure that they are taken care of. So a couple of verses that were comforting for me. So I kind of want to bring us back to like a place of comfort, because I feel like what we were talking about, like feminism is a scam, is way too black and white. The reality is we're just devaluating really our family and caring for our children, and devaluating that femininity and that desire to care for our children. And so I kind of want, but I also understand though, if you're in the same situation as like I am, and you're like, I can't quit work, I have to keep working. And so I want to kind of bring up a few verses that comfort me. And one is Proverbs, 31:28. And I know we all say the Proverbs 31 woman, but I want to focus specifically on 28. And it says, her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Not all of us get praises from our husbands, but I want us to remember that our children will call us blessed, and they will be grateful for us, even if they're not grateful for us in the moment. Because sometimes, many times, moments with our children are not great. They have big emotions they don't know how to process, and we're their safe place to process them. And they'll always process them in a way that's like constructive. It's a lot of screaming.
No, but I mean, I think even from what I said earlier, like I totally relate to that verse, because I think of my mom as like, I definitely will call her blessed, and I'm grateful for her sacrifices and for who she was as a parent. Who she is as a parent. She's great. She's still parenting. It never ends.
It doesn't. It just changes. And then I kind of want to bring us back to like James 1 and 2. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. And I think in the context of this, he was talking about trials as a persecution, but just taking trials and applying it to, I have to be separated from my kids right now. I'm overwhelmed right now. My house isn't clean right now. There's nothing going how I want it to be. This isn't the plan I had for my life. Like, this is trial, but to consider it pure joy. And as a reminder of where our strength truly comes from, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. And so as we face these trials of being overwhelmed and overstimulated and just feeling like a constant failure because everything isn't where we want it to be and we can't give our all 100,000% of the time, I want us to remember that we are, we're going, as we feel like we're failing, to turn to God to give us strength to keep going through the day, to being there for our children, and to try and ask him to put joy in our hearts, to find the joy in all of these trials that we are facing. An example is my oldest is experiencing some really strong emotions. So where does she express those? She expresses those right to me. And I find joy in how she, even though she's screaming at me, she is able to verbalize exactly afterwards how I'm feeling. She's like, I'm really angry right now. That's a joy moment. Like, she can connect those emotions. She's just not screaming. She's like, I'm angry. Okay, we can go from there. We can work with that. So I want to kind of end in prayer. It's a really, really short prayer. So, dear Heavenly Father, thank you for all the opportunities you have blessed us with as women. With these opportunities have come struggles. We pray for strength and that you help us find the joy in these trials as women and mothers. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ashley. Like, I just appreciate your openness, your vulnerability, and even just the grace that you led this conversation with, because I know it's something we're you're walking through.
We're
This,
all walking through it. We're not
we're all
alone.
walking through it. Even my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna face it one day, and even trying to, orient our lives as women. I think that is our thing. We have to orient our lives to think about the future, and like the future families that we want, and the children that we want, the spouses that we want. So yeah, I think that this is a comfort to know that like you can walk through it and be okay.
We can walk through it with God. We're not
Yes,
alone.
definitely. Because, like the verse in James that you quoted, like
Yeah.
the testing of our faith produces perseverance. And yep.
So, and thank you so much, Simone. It's been a great conversation. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. If you have something you want to contribute to the show, please feel free to comment below. Or, as always, feel free to email us at nstgreatideas@gmail.com. That's N as in no, S as in small, T as in talk, greatideas@gmail.com. Thank
Thank you
you.
for joining, and see you next time.